morning, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Military Wire and the special series Evasion 2020, which is Live on Purpose, where we still interview some of America's greatest assets, those who have served this country in and out of uniform, who are doing some pretty spectacular things. And so today's guest is no different. We got Troy Daland on, who, when I get into Troy's background, you're going to be impressed. And we're really going to unpack this issue of answering the call, really going from one front line to another front line. But Troy is the CEO of Durisan, but more importantly, he served in the world's greatest Air Force and has got a great background, which I'll let Troy kind of dig into. But Troy, welcome to the show.
Well, hey, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, 100%. Troy, there's so much that I want to unpack with you, but you know, the big issue now is really society jumping from one crisis to another crisis. And you've got some pretty big experience in dealing with crisis and jumping from one crisis to another. And before we get there, help us unpack essentially your military background. Kind of give us the 30-second overview on your military background and how that really prepared you for what we're facing today as a society.
Right. So I spent 24 years in the military as a SEER specialist. So survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. And really, I guess at the core of it, SEER teaches you how to deal with different things, right? Different stresses, different problems in the environment. Doesn't matter what environment you're in, austere, battlefield. So I guess just some of that grooming over the course of 24 years. Now, in the course of that time, I've also been in 42 different countries, worked with several different militaries, Department of State. So you get to see a bunch of different cultures and you get to really work with a bunch of different people. So you know how people react to certain stress situations. So yeah, it was a great laboratory. 24 years of just getting to read people and work with people has been a great experience.
Yeah, so do you think, I mean, obviously that background helped you with what you're doing today. But before we go there, Troy, help me understand, do you think that most veterans today, even though they don't have your experience, but have some experience, working with other cultures, et cetera, how do you think that positions them for a time like today that we're experiencing here in America, where there's a lot of unrest, a lot of different uncertainty? Do you think it better prepares us to deal with these times, or do you think it doesn't really make us any different than some of our civilian counterparts?
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
sure you're probably biased with that question, but I'm throwing it.
Yeah, I'm a little biased with it, of course.
Yeah.
I'm also involved with a network. So I chair a network of special operations guys transitioning out of the military into the civilian world. And we did a Zoom conference not too long ago, and to find out that, man, what a time for us to be transitioning. Most guys and girls are saying, you know what, maybe I just want to stay in the military. I take a different approach to it. No, we want you out there, because all the training that people have gotten throughout the military, whether it's, hey, you were in chem gear for 2 weeks, well, that's quarantine right there. And people have done, right, we're able to do that pretty successfully. Or, hey, we're putting you into you're at home one day and the next day, you're in the Middle East. Now you're having to deal with a completely different environment. So I think military folks are able to make that transition pretty good. So I think there's a lot of opportunities out there for people that are joining the civilian side from the military.
Do you think, Troy, and I love what you say about that. I think the mindset, you're talking really about mindset, right? How we approach crisis, which has a lot to do with mindset. Do you think, well, how would you suggest that those who are transitioning now communicate that differentiator? Because we do bring something to the marketplace, but oftentimes it gets buried. And I think that we'll dive into that a little bit here. But how do we communicate that we do have the differentiator that can actually help people better navigate through chaos?
Right. It's no different than doing any exercise in the military. Most people have been put in a leadership position where they had to manage a small team to a large team in those stressful situations. Either, if it's benign enough as a IG inspection, or you're actually over in South Korea, which I spent a little bit of time over there, and you're dealing with chem warfare type stuff, or you're in the Middle East. It doesn't matter where they put you. The training that the military has given you helps better prepare for that. So on the civilian side, how do you go ahead and take that training and explain it to the civilian side? is very, at a very basic level, it's a leadership. I've led under stressful times. I've led in these different environments. And holy smokes, I tell you what, leadership is one of those things that is just not that common. I thought leaving the military, I'm like, oh, I'm going to be up against all these great leaders. Not to say there's not, there's tons of them out there.
Yeah.
But military folks, there's a home for you there, and in a leadership position or a position where you've led, it doesn't matter what rank you are really, you've led something in your time in the military. And just having that understanding, that mindset that you talk about, better prepares individuals to do that. So conveying that on the civilian side is extremely helpful.
So Troy, you're the CEO of Durisan, which manufactures, I'm going to say like hand sanitizer, a number of different things along that line, right? And you target folks who have served in the military, probably for some of the obvious reasons that you've just, shared. And you've got that experience as a CEO to look for that type of talent. What would you say to other CEOs that don't know how to decipher what that talent pool is? Because now we're talking about a pool of 38 million people who are unemployed, right? That are seeking employment. Right. And it's one thing for me to say that, Troy, I can convey leadership. And yes, I've led these teams. I've been a part of these type of exercises. I had to deal with this type of crisis. But is there one thing that you're finding when somebody comes through your door at Durisan that you say, you know what, that's the right guy? How do you determine the right guy? How do you personally determine the right guy?
Right. Finding the right talent is extremely important across the civilian sector. Right. One, you show up to work on time. You do what you say you're going to do. And then a lot of times it comes down to, I'm going to go ahead and listen to what individuals are saying, and then I'm going to go ahead and execute. It's just not that common out there. And I hate to say that, but it's easy to see with somebody's attitude and their mindset right away, if, hey, the discipline is there, we can work with the rest of the stuff, right? We can train. I'd say the military does a pretty good job of making sure that you're trained right, or there's compliance and regulations, you know how to follow those, for which there is in the company that I'm running. So it makes it pretty easy. Now, I will say, I have a little bit of an advantage because I get to see a lot of guys coming out of the military, and I end up kind of looking for guys that had an MBA or had some type of business background or accounting or heavy project management. So I have a little bit of an advantage to see some of that stuff that's coming out. All the education that the military has given anybody in their course of being in, that transfers very well out into the civilian world. So.
Is that right?
Hey,
so
yeah.
Let's talk about Durisan, because you guys suddenly got kind of thrust into the limelight with everything that was going on, right? With COVID and this, push for, man, everybody's got to wash their hands. You need antimicrobials. How did you, and I love what it says, it's really, you were jumping from, one crisis to the next crisis, but really from one front line to another. How did you guys plus up so quickly to go ahead and meet the demand?
Well, we were lucky because as companies were laying people off, I was able to bring in talented people that were being laid off, right? We were able to go ahead and run 3 shifts. So 24/7 we were running for quite some time just to meet the demands of our customers. So that's how we were able to do it.
Yeah. So what are you guys finding now? I mean, because I think the environment's shifting even more so. Are you finding that we're going to be in this kind of post-COVID operational standpoint where we're going to need antimicrobials and people are still going to demand this? Or do you feel that you're going to have to repurpose moving forward and you got the right team to do it anyway?
We do. We have a very strong team, so I'm happy about that. And of course, most people would say, just give me my people and I'll go ahead and do whatever I can in whatever business environment. We just happen to be in a business right now that we're seeing a lot of growth in. We don't see that slowing down. As we take more market share within the antimicrobial, hand soap, sanitizer, and even germicidals, we really found, just with the companies that are coming to us right now, they're taking more of an approach that, hey, we want to go ahead and protect people that are in our companies and our customers. So we end up being a supplier to a lot of those types of organizations, some very large ones as well.
Yeah. So Troy, I think with your experience, and I know a number of CEOs as they go through this time trying to figure out how to navigate moving forward, right? A lot of different changes, having to work in maybe some extreme op tempos, but with a diminished staff. Share with our listeners maybe a crisis that you faced that really kind of made you push to new growth areas. Does that make sense? Because I think a lot of people
Yeah,
are
of
being
course.
pushed to new growth. Yeah.
Yeah. How about a month after 9/11, right? Being in
Yeah.
a country that I had no idea about, working with people that were part of the team anyway, right? And we're trying to discover and explore what is in the realm of possible, right? So talk about a high stress. I mean, I was still a pretty new kid at the time when the war kicked off, but now we're in a really Uzbekistan, which I had no idea even existed prior to that event going off. So there's a good case.
Yeah.
But there's been several throughout the military, right, where you get kind of put in a situation, whether it's humanitarian. I just happened to be in Thailand right when a couple of years ago in the Philippines, I had the tsunami come through. So we were diverted to go back over there. And then, of course, you're doing humanitarian aid. There's several accounts. Or
Yeah.
you're about to take a team of guys off the ramp of a C-130, which most people would consider to be fairly stressful. But again, when you have your team, the possibilities are endless. And that's what we were able to do with the company I'm working for now. We build the right team and you can really accomplish anything. Now, a lot of folks that haven't been induced to that stress before, we had to deal with some of that. And it's mostly I guess it's a little bit easier for folks that follow somebody that's had a little bit of the stress before in their life. And I don't know, to be honest with you, I mean, I kind of approach things from a pretty calm point of view anyway. And when this stuff started kicking off, I mean, I'm right in there with the guys on the production floor doing the things that needed to be done to get the product out the door and really into the hands of the people that needed it.
Yeah.
So there is no hierarchy when it comes to those crisis situations. Everybody's doing the work to get to the end result. So
Troy, do you ever feel as a leader, I mean, there's a lot of weight that falls on a leader's shoulders, especially during crisis, right? And we talk about answering that call. Have there ever been moments, and I'm sure there have, so I don't want this to appear like a setup question at all, but have there been moments where you have said, you know what, I just got to make a decision. I'm not sure it's the right decision. And how do you have the confidence to do that, but then execute smartly through it? Because I think there's a number of folks, small business owners, even maybe mid to large business owners now that are going to be like, I'm not really sure, but I know I need to lead. So how do you do that? How do you face that scenario and work through it smartly?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it does come down to making a decision, right or wrong. You go ahead and take the information that you currently have on hand, make sure that there's some type of backdrop in your history that you can match it to. Sometimes there is, and then sometimes you're not. And that's where you have to make a decision. But I guess where the confidence comes from is knowing that you can pivot and you have the right people with you to make that pivot, where they're not going to go, the guy can't seem to make the right decision here. No,
Yeah.
that's not it. Everything was fairly well thought out, but we had to do a slight turn here or there. Shoot. And I mean, I've been doing that since I started running the company. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a recurring theme that I hear you saying, and it has a lot to do with team. And I think that seems to be pretty important to you. And I think that's probably the secret to your success. Would you say it really is making sure that you find the right team members to join, because that makes a difference in a company?
Oh, of course,
Yeah.
without a doubt. I mean, it's not one individual that's running the company or making things work. It's definitely a team effort. And I think, it's a pretty small company. It's 45 folks, and most of the people work in production and operations. And the ability to go ahead and have a team that can go ahead and trust each other
Yeah.
is worth its weight in gold. Because, I mean, we've hit hard times during the COVID. We're talking about there's supply chain issues, right? Because
Yeah.
a lot of product is coming out of China. There's other vendor issues. There's stuff that we're shipping to companies. Well, they're shut down. So we're having to get through all these different nuanced things throughout our really the past 4 months, and had to work around a bunch of stuff. But it is unique because we have a room. I call it the war room. It's got whiteboards all over the place, and we'll get the key players in there, and we'll just draw stuff up on the wall and really come up to our a solution for what we perceive to be the solution at that particular point.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, being nimble, I think, is one of the things that we talk about is, everybody's got to be, you got to adapt, and you got to be willing to, make some changes very quickly, depending on different scenarios. So, yeah, that's good. Thank you for that. So, Troy, you're also the president of the Special Operations Memorial Foundation. I know there's probably a foundation that's pretty close to your heart. Would you explain to the listeners why that is, and what you hope to do or are doing with that foundation?
So yeah, well, thanks for asking as well. It was a couple of years ago I found out that there was even a Special Operations Memorial, and I had worked on MacDill for 2 years before I even realized that. Folks had started it. A bunch of operators, if you would, got together early on and said, hey, we need to go ahead and recognize the folks that we have. And that was almost 25 years ago to this month that they did that. And they started gathering, they turned it into a nonprofit, started raising a bunch of money, and started putting names up on a small memorial. 9/11 hit, and then the memorial changed in size because we started seeing a lot of folks obviously meet their fate overseas. So they grew the whole memorial. There's now 900, oddly enough, ironically enough, I guess, 911 operators on that wall.
Oh, wow.
And 561 of them is post 9/11. And I got involved probably about 3 years ago. I was on the board of directors, and then a year after being on the board, they asked me to take over as president because a lot of the board members just started aging out a little bit. So they were looking for somebody that could come in and kind of brand it. And that was my thing when I came onto the board. I was like, I will help brand, put it on social media, make sure the website's up to date, raise money, and just, it was pretty, and we go back to the team thing, right? So I started enlisting a bunch of guys I know could get that work done, probably around my age group and younger. And we were able to go out and raise money and really upkeep the memorial. So it's quite spectacular. And if anybody's ever seen the SOCOM sphere, the memorial is in that shape. So it's a privilege to run that.
Yeah. How do people support it, Troy? If people wanted to support that foundation, come alongside, financially, or maybe even volunteer, are there opportunities to do so?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can go to the website and they can donate there. And also they can shoot a note to info@somf@gmail.com, and it comes straight to me. And then for volunteer opportunities. And we have a lot of that. A lot of that happens. The community really gives an outpouring to that particular memorial, especially here in the Tampa Bay area. So yeah, we're fortunate with what we've been able to do. Now, we just recently put a vehicle, a UTV, all-terrain vehicle, in the Mint 400. I don't know if your listeners are familiar with the Mint 400, but they did their
Yeah,
first.
no, probably not. So just explain it to them. That'd be great.
So the Mint 400 has been around Las Vegas. It's a desert race similar to the Baja 1000. It's actually considered North America's toughest off-road race. And the founders of that particular race wanted to do a military challenge. So they had all these nonprofits from the military side. I think we had 15 cars join this race. Polaris supplied the UTVs. I supplied the team. And then we just had to get ourselves out there. So we raised over $17,000 during that race. And we took second. So we got a little bit more of the money off that. So it was a great experience. The outpouring that goes into those events for the military is just tremendous. It's tremendous.
That's really cool, and I think the listeners are getting my background chorus of my dog in the background. So, now that we've had to convert everything over to the home studio, it's so amazing what sometimes shows up. But
Yeah.
so I apologize to you on that, Troy. But I want people to be able to support the foundation. We do a lot of work with SEALs, UDTs, SEAL Foundation, things along that line. It's important and cause for us, but anybody that's a special operator. You all are doing things that most people aren't even aware of. And I think it's really important to not only support you as the individual, but you and your families too. And the work that you guys are doing there is commendable. So I definitely want people to be sure to check it out. So as we're wrapping this up, Troy, what would you say to people? Because there's going to be a lot of veterans out there on the streets now, right? And even in a good economy, nearly 1/3 of the veteran job seekers were underemployed, and that was in a great economy. And now we're talking about, it could potentially emerge out to be, again, a great economy in the next couple of months. But how do people take advantage of what you're doing? Do you have opportunities to hire, number one? And number two, what would you say that our guys really need to focus on in order to get the attraction of somebody in HR?
So to both of those questions, we're always looking to hire folks in that particular area that I'm working in right now. Military background, obviously I key into that pretty quick because I know a lot of the background that military folks have. In fact, Durisan's got 5 or 6 out of what I've told you, out of the 45 that are previous military employed. So I definitely look at that. And then to your other question is, what's going to go ahead and attract you to an HR? I think if you look back in your military career and as you're getting out, that you key on the things that you really enjoyed about the military, right? Was it leading people? Was it traveling? Was it running certain projects? I mean, these are the things that are going to transfer very well and can do that, a little bit of that speak on the civilian side. I was lucky because, well, I like to network. So it was easy for me to reach out and find civilians that are doing stuff in the similar space I'm doing right now. And that's really being a businessman, not necessarily being a hand sanitizer CEO, but it's doing business. And I got a lot of input from them. And holy smokes, there's a lot of outpouring for the military on the civilian side. You just need to find the people that you can actually reach out to for mentorship. And I'm very fortunate because I've probably got a handful of guys that have really helped mold me as I came out of the military and just gave me a lot of great advice and still do, right? In fact, the guy that I work for now through an investment firm, he's helped tremendously, right? So I use him as a mentor and as a good close friend. So that's helpful.
Yes, yeah, I love that. And I think that's so important, Trey. I think sometimes, we get out and we think we can navigate on our own. And I think to your point is team is really important, not only external, because you need to have that support network to help you navigate potentially your next career, your next job, et cetera. But even when you join a company, to be sure that you're looking for the right team to join, because then you'll have success, mission success in that. And I love that you speak to that. So Troy, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. I want people to be sure that they check out, the Special Operations Memorial Foundation. Be sure that they also check out what you're doing there at Durisan too, because I think that's important work that you guys are doing. Like you said, it's going to be around. It's not going away. People that are looking for Tribe, they can always join our groups there at Vet Steps, Facebook group, where we bring people together and we have the cool interviews like with you, Troy, there featured there so people can listen, figure out how to implement some of the stuff that you said in their own personal life. So Troy, any last words you want to leave our listeners?
Yeah, well, remain strong during these times. And really, there's tons of opportunities out there for folks getting out of the military, and look under every stone. There's something out there for you.
Yeah, I love it. Troy, thanks again for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity. It's been a great time. Thank you.
You bet.